What happens when the guy who owns the place walks in as just another customer and the manager doesn't even notice? Quentin Tate leaned back in his office chair, staring at the 5th customer complaint in 2 weeks. 6 fast casual burger joints, inherited from his late father, and suddenly things were slipping. The numbers were steady, but the tone of the feedback wasn't. Cold food, rude managers, unhappy staff. That last one bothered him the most. His father built the business from a single food truck. Quentin had kept it growing, but he hadn't worked a shift or even walked into a store as himself in months. The stores were in different cities across the state. Each had its own manager and crew. He knew the district manager, but beyond that, most employees had never met him. Especially not since he shaved the beard, cut his hair short, and started dressing like a typical 35-year-old dad on a weekend road trip. So he put on his sunglasses, a plain hoodie, and old sneakers, and drove 2 hours out to store 4. It was in a busy shopping strip just off the freeway. A good spot always had foot traffic. He wanted to go in as a regular customer, get a feel for the place. No clipboard, no warning, just walk in, order, and sit. He pushed open the glass door around lunch rush. The smell of grilled beef hit him right away. The place was clean, but something felt tense. A young woman at the register, petite, maybe 20, was dealing with a line of impatient customers. She was moving quick, smiling, doing her best to stay upbeat. "Next," she called. Her name tag said Paige. Quentin stepped aside and watched. A man in a polo shirt came around the corner from the kitchen. Mid-40s, stocky, red-faced. "Manager." His badge said Tim. He looked directly at Paige. "I told you to stop giving out extra sauces. That stuff costs money," Tim snapped, loud enough for everyone in line to hear. She kept her voice low. "He asked for 1 extra ranch. I don't care what he asked. You're not here to hand out freebies like it's Halloween. Stick to the rules or clock out." Everyone got quiet. Paige shrank a little, but she nodded. "Yes, sir." Quentin's jaw tightened. He stepped up next in line. Paige looked at him, trying to recover her smile. "Hey there. What can I get started for you?" "Double cheeseburger, fries, and a root beer," he said. "And could I get a side of barbecue and ranch?" She hesitated just for a second, but then nodded. "Sure." Tim caught it. "Seriously? Did you not hear what I just said?" "I'll pay for it," Quentin said, stepping in. "It's not a big deal." Tim turned to him. "This isn't about you. It's about her doing her job." Quentin held his stare. "She is doing her job," with a smile, "which is more than I can say for you." Tim laughed. "You got no clue how this works, pal." Quentin didn't answer. He paid in cash, took his cup, and stepped aside. Paige mouthed a quiet "thank you" as she handed him the receipt. He sat by the window and watched. Tim went back into the kitchen, barking at someone about grill times. One of the cooks, a tall kid with glasses, looked like he was about to cry. Another girl on drive-thru kept glancing nervously toward the front. Quentin ate slowly, listening. Tim hovered like a hawk, correcting every move with sharp words. No praise, no patience. At one point, Paige accidentally dropped a receipt. Tim picked it up and shoved it back at her. "Stop being clumsy. You're not 6. That was it." Quentin stood up, walked back to the counter, and asked for the manager. Tim turned, annoyed. "It's me. What now?" Quentin didn't blink. "Got a minute to talk?" "Out back." Tim sighed. "Make it quick." They stepped outside near the dumpsters. The hum of traffic filled the silence. Quentin took off his sunglasses and looked him square in the eye. "My name's Quentin Tate. I own this place, and 5 others just like it." Tim blinked. "Wait, what? You didn't recognize me because we've never met. I've been watching you for the past 30 minutes, and I don't like what I saw." Tim grew defensive. Look, I run a tight ship. These kids, they slack off if you let them. No. What I saw wasn't leadership. It was control. Fear. You humiliated that girl in front of customers. You shoved a receipt in her hand like she was nothing. That's not how we do things. Not under my name. Tim shook his head. You don't understand day to day. You sit in an office. I've worked every station in this place. My father built this company with respect. You're tearing that apart. Effective immediately, you're done. You'll be escorted out after your shift. Tim's face went red. This is ridiculous. You want to keep talking? Or walk out with a little dignity? Tim didn't answer, just stormed back inside. Quentin stood there for a moment. Then he walked back in. People looked up, sensing something had shifted. Paige glanced at him. Is everything okay? He nodded. It will be. I need everyone to take a 5-minute break. On me. Drinks? Food? Whatever. The crew looked at each other, confused, cautious. Quentin raised his voice a bit. I'm not a customer. I'm the owner, and I've got a few things to say. The room froze. Paige dropped the pen in her hand. The kid on the grill stepped out, eyes wide. Quentin looked around. We're gonna fix this. Starting now. The restaurant was quiet. Not silent, fries still sizzled on timers. The soda machine hissed, but quieter than any lunch rush Quentin had ever seen. The staff stood uncertainly behind the counter, eyes flicking back and forth between one another. No one knew quite what to do with their hands. Paige leaned lightly against the register, her shoulders stiff, while the line cook with the glasses took a cautious step forward from behind the prep area. I'll be quick, Quentin said, keeping his tone level. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here because I needed to see this with my own eyes. The kid at the grill shifted his weight. He looked about 19, trying not to stare but clearly processing what Quentin had just revealed. The girl from drive-thru, thin with tightly braided hair, stood with her lips slightly parted like she wanted to speak but wasn't sure if she should. Quentin turned to Paige. How long have you worked here? Almost 2 years, she said quietly. Since I was 17. He nodded once. And in that time, have you had any other managers besides Tim? She hesitated, then glanced at the others. Just one before. He quit right after Christmas last year. Why? No one really said. But things felt different after he left. Quentin turned toward the kitchen. Who's on shift right now besides you all? Just us, said the girl at drive-thru. Me, Paige, Nate on grill, and Marisol's doing prep in the back. Tim was supposed to bring in a 5th, but he said labor was too high this week. Quentin frowned. And how often are you this short during peak? Most weekdays, Nate said from the grill. Weekends are worse. He schedules extra people then cuts them last minute. The fryer beeped. Nate turned and handled it out of habit, dropping a fresh basket and moving with practiced efficiency. Quentin looked back at Paige. You've been holding this place together? I try to, she said. We all do. But it gets hard when you're afraid of messing up every time he walks in. The girl at drive-thru finally spoke up. He threatened to dock my hours once because I asked to go home sick. Quentin's eyes narrowed. Did he? Yeah. I lost 2 shifts that week. He couldn't hide the anger rising in him, but he kept his voice steady. What's your name? Jada. He nodded. Jada. Thank you for telling me. Just then, a woman emerged from the back, wiping her hands on her apron. Early 40s, sharp eyes, flower on her sleeve. What's going on? She asked. Quentin turned to her. You must be Marisol. Her brow furrowed. Yeah. Who are? I'm Quentin. I own the place. She froze, then blinked slowly, like someone trying to wake up from a dream they didn't expect. You serious? He nodded. I am. She looked at the others, then back at him. Well, that explains the weird vibe out here. I'm here because I needed to see what was happening in my stores. I didn't expect it to be this bad. Marisol folded her arms, skeptical. You want the truth? Or the version that gets people written up? I want the real version. Always. She exhaled. Tim's been running this crew into the ground for months. Cuts hours, then blames us when we fall behind. I've been here 4 years. This is the worst it's ever felt. We've had people quit mid-shift. One girl walked out crying last week, and he told the rest of us to pick up the slack. Quentin's jaw tightened. Was that documented? Marisol raised an eyebrow. You think he puts that stuff in the system? He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced toward the narrow hallway near the office. Is there any way to access the cameras from here? Just the manager's tablet. He keeps it locked in the office, but he always wipes the footage after a day or two unless he's saving something to blame someone. Quentin's expression darkened. I'll take care of that. He turned back to the crew. You're not the problem. He was, and effective immediately he's gone. If anyone here ever speaks to you the way he did again, I want to know about it. Directly. No one spoke. Then Nate said, Do you mean? We tell you. I'll leave my personal contact info. If anything like this happens again, I expect to hear it from you, not just the district reports. Paige's hands were trembling slightly as she pressed a button on the register to clear the last transaction of the rush. Are we in trouble? She asked. No, Quentin said. You're not in trouble. You're doing your jobs under pressure that never should have existed. Jada asked, What happens now? We're still short. Quentin looked around. I'm not going anywhere today. I'll stay and help. We'll rotate breaks. Get through the afternoon. Then I'll bring in 2 floaters from Store 2 to support the evening shift. You all deserve to breathe. Marisol snorted. You know how to work a line? Better than most. My dad made me earn the keys. There was a pause. Then Nate grinned faintly. All right, let's see it then. Quentin moved to the hand sink and washed his arms up to the elbow. He grabbed an apron from the hook, tied it with practice speed, and stepped onto the line. Let's move, he said. Tickets won't wait. For the next hour, he grilled patties, dropped buns, and called orders. The team worked more smoothly than he expected. With the tension gone, they communicated in short, efficient phrases. Paige called drive-through orders while Jada coordinated pickups. Nate moved with more energy. Even Marisol, who hadn't smiled once earlier, cracked a grin when Quentin handed off a perfectly flipped double stack. By early afternoon, the line had thinned. Quentin stepped back, wiped down the prep table, and looked toward the crew. I'm stepping out to make a call. Keep rolling. He walked to the office, unlocked it with the emergency override, and found the manager's tablet exactly where Marisol had said. He pulled up the last 3 days of camera footage, most of it intact. What he saw over the next 15 minutes made his stomach turn. Tim berating a teen crew member for dropping a bun. Mocking a customer who had a speech impediment. Slamming the headset down and muttering profanity under his breath. And worst of all, a clip from 3 days ago where he cornered Jada near the cooler for taking too long on a drink order. His tone was low, but his words weren't vague. You don't move faster. I'll find someone who looks better doing it. That was all Quentin needed. He exited the footage, secured the tablet, and called HR. Terminate him immediately, he said. I want his access revoked. And I want a compliance review of every store he's been in. Full audit. He hung up. When he returned to the floor, the crew was cleaning up between waves. Marisol was coaching Nate on portion control, and Jada was restocking sauce trays methodically, precisely, like someone who finally had time to care. Paige looked up from the register. Everything all right? Better than all right, he said. We're going to fix this place from the ground up, starting with you four. She hesitated. What do you mean? I mean, Quentin said. Next week, you're all getting formal performance reviews. Real ones. Not made-up excuses to cut hours. And based on what I've seen, expect raises. You've been running this place without support. That changes now. Nate blinked. Seriously? Quentin nodded. Seriously? There was a long pause. Then Marisol said, if you're really serious, we need a new walk-in freezer. That thing leaks like crazy. Quentin grinned. Send me the repair quote. I'll have it approved by morning. For the first time, the room didn't feel tight. It felt open, like air had finally come back into it. He looked around at the crew, tired, overworked, but still standing. This wasn't a perfect fix. It was a beginning. But after what he'd seen, Quentin would take a beginning over silence any day. The lunch rush had passed, but Quentin didn't leave. He stayed through the lull, apron still on, working side by side with the crew. He didn't just observe, he stocked napkins, refilled lids, wiped counters. It wasn't about the work itself. It was about presence, about making it clear that leadership didn't end at the office door. Paige moved with more ease now, her shoulders no longer drawn up to her ears. Jada had gone back to handling drive-through orders with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there earlier. Nate still moved quickly on the grill, but without the twitchy edge Quentin had seen before. Even the music, something low and rhythmic playing from the ceiling speakers, felt less like background noise and more like the pulse of a place that was finally breathing again. Quentin was scrubbing down the soda station when a man in a black polo with a company logo walked through the front door. Tall, late 30s, clean-shaven with sharp eyes. He scanned the room, then approached the counter with a clipboard in hand. Afternoon, the man said, addressing Paige. District compliance check. Where's Tim? Quentin stepped in before she could answer. He's no longer with the company, he said. Effective today. The man raised an eyebrow. And you are? Quentin Tate. The clipboard dipped an inch. You're the owner? Quentin nodded. That's right. The man straightened. Didn't expect to find you here. I didn't expect to be needed here, Quentin said. But here we are. The man glanced around, taking in the state of the store. The kitchen was clean. The crew moved with measured pace. No one looked panicked, just tired. I take it this visit just became something else, he said. It did, Quentin replied. We need to talk. In the office. They stepped into the small back room and closed the door. Quentin didn't sit, he stayed standing, one hand resting on the back of the chair. I want a full audit, he said. Not just the store. Every location Tim oversaw. I've already seen enough to know there's more beneath the surface. The man nodded slowly. You want me to pull labor reports? Scheduling patterns? Complaint records? All of it. And I want to know who signed off on evaluations in the last 6 months. If any of his practices were normalized, I need to know how deep it goes. The man flipped open the folder. We've had a few flags. High turnover. Unusual write-up ratios. Nothing formal until now. Quentin's expression didn't move. You'll have my full support, but make it quick. I don't want this lingering. I'll get started tonight. Good. They left the office and returned to the front. The clipboard man took photos, asked a few questions quietly, and then left without fanfare. Quentin rejoined the crew just in time to catch the start of the early dinner prep. Marisol emerged from the back, her apron damp from scrubbing. She glanced at the clock, then at Quentin. Still here? She asked. Looks that way, he said. She nodded once, as if confirming something unspoken. You planning to stay through close? Depends. Anyone else coming in for the evening? Just 2. But neither's trained for manager functions. Tim used to schedule light and just handle stuff himself. Of course he did. She crossed her arms. So what's your plan? I'm not going to let this team carry the weight alone. Not tonight. Marisol didn't smile. But her tone shifted. All right, then you're on trash duty. We're due for a deep sweep in the alley bins. Quentin grabbed gloves without protest. Out back, the alley was quiet except for the distant hum of HVAC units. The dumpster reeked, but he didn't flinch. He worked fast, stacking cardboard, tying off bags, and wheeling the bins into place before returning inside. As he re-entered the kitchen, the front bell rang. A customer, maybe in his late 20s, walked in with a small child in tow. The boy clutched a toy car and wore a red t-shirt 2 sizes too big. Paige greeted them. Hey, welcome in. What can I get started for you? The man hesitated slightly. Just a kid's meal. Cheeseburger, no pickles. And a small drink. Got it. You want fries or apple slices? Fries, please. As she entered the order, the boy leaned over the counter, eyeing the shake machine. Can I get a shake? He asked, voice hopeful. The man gave a tired smile. Maybe next time, buddy. Paige tapped something on her screen, then leaned forward. Actually, we've got a little promotion for first-time visitors today. Free small shake with every kid's meal. The man blinked. Really? Sure, she said. You good with vanilla? He nodded slowly, unsure. Yeah. Thanks. When they sat by the window, Quentin moved over to the register. We offering promotions now? He asked quietly. She glanced at him, then shrugged. I figured you wouldn't mind. They looked like they needed a win. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, You were right. She returned to the orders, no fanfare. By 6:30, the 2 evening crew members arrived, both young, both cautious. Quentin introduced himself briefly, then stepped back to let Marisol handle assignments. She moved with a quiet authority that told him everything he needed to know. She didn't want a title. She had command already. As the dinner crowd picked up, Quentin helped on bagging and tray assembly. At one point, Jada passed him a headset. You'll need this if you're running order check. He took it without question. The rhythm of the team had changed entirely. There was no chaos, just motion. Controlled, calm. At 7:15, a minivan pulled up to the drive-thru. Quentin took the order. 3 meals. 1 with no onions, 1 with lettuce wrap, and a 3rd with gluten-free bun. He repeated it back clearly, confirmed the total, and sent it to the screen. The food was packed and ready in under 4 minutes. As he handed the bag to Jada, she glanced at him sideways. You ever think about just running a store again? He didn't answer. Not right away. But then he said, I think I forgot how much I used to love this part. She gave a short nod and passed the bag through the window. By 8, the floor had settled again. Quentin stepped into the back to grab a water and found Nate sitting on a milk crate by the prep sink, tying his shoe. You all right? Quentin asked. Yeah, just resting my ankle. Been acting up again. You heard it. Old sprain. Tim used to say if I took too long, I'd get docked. So I just worked through it. Quentin leaned on the doorframe. You need time off? Nate shook his head. Nah, just a brace. And maybe not 6-day weeks. I'll make sure that happens. Nate stood up. Appreciate it. A few minutes later, Quentin stepped outside for the first time since morning. The parking lot was quiet. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in soft orange. He pulled out his phone and dialed. A voice answered on the second ring. Tate. Hey, it's me. I need to post a new manager opening. Store 4. There was a pause. You want us to run it corporate side or internal? Internal. I've got someone in mind. Got it. He hung up. Inside, the crew had started their closing checklist. He stepped back in, peeled off his gloves, and found Marisol near the sink. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. She wiped her hands and nodded. They walked to the small office, now cleared of anything Tim had left behind. "I'm not going to stretch this out," Quentin said. "You've been holding this store together without the title or the pay. That changes now." Marisol blinked. "You offering me manager? That's exactly what I'm doing. Full benefits, salary, and the authority to build this crew up the way you know it needs to be." She didn't answer right away. "You sure?" she asked. "You've barely known me a day. I've watched how the team responds when you speak. That tells me everything I need." She exhaled. "All right, if you're serious, I'll take it. But I want to hire 2 more people. And I want to train Paige to run shifts." "Done. And Nate needs better shoes. His footing's off. I'll have a pair sent in his size by Friday." She nodded. "Then we've got a deal." As they stepped out of the office, Quentin looked around the store. The team was still moving, cleaning, prepping, wiping down every inch. But there was no dread in their steps. Just work. Clear, focused, and proud. He didn't need to stay much longer. The changes were already taking root. And he knew this wasn't just about one store anymore. It was nearly 9:30 when the last of the day's customers filtered out. Quentin stood near the back entry, leaning against a clean stainless prep table, watching the crew finish the final wave of closing duties. The air carried that particular mix of lemon cleaner and fryer oil that lingered after a long shift. No music played now, just the dull clatter of trays being stacked, the gentle hiss of the mop bucket rolling over tile. He rolled his sleeves to the elbow and began untangling a box of new headset cords someone had left in a storage bin. Paige passed him on her way to the register, tossing a used rag into the laundry bin near the back wall. "I didn't think today was going to end like this," she said without looking at him. "No one did," Quentin replied. "But I'm glad it did." Paige paused, then turned to face him. Her hair, once neatly tied, was now loose at the temples, strands clinging to her forehead. Her voice was quieter than before. "I was going to quit," she said. "Next week. I had another job lined up. Just retail, nothing great. But I couldn't keep doing this." Quentin didn't respond right away. He dropped the cords into a drawer, shut it gently, then looked at her. "You still planning to?" She shook her head. "Not anymore." He nodded once and moved to the front, where Jada was wiping down the last of the drive-through counter. She was humming under her breath, something faint and familiar but unrecognizable. When he approached, she stopped and looked up. "Need something?" she asked. "I owe you an apology." Her expression flickered. "You shouldn't have had to carry what you did," he continued. "And there's no excuse for me letting it go this long without seeing it." Jada didn't speak immediately. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, not defensive, but tired. "I don't blame you," she said finally. "You can't fix what you don't see. But I'm glad you saw it." He gave a small nod. "I've already scheduled a third-party HR team to come through next week. You'll be included in any interviews you're comfortable with. No pressure. But your voice will be heard on paper this time." Jada looked at him for a long second, then gave a slow nod in return. In the kitchen, Nate was finishing dishes, his apron damp up to the chest. He didn't look up when Quentin entered, just kept methodically rinsing and stacking. "You holding together back here?" Quentin asked. "Yeah," Nate said. "Dishes are almost done. I'll hit the floors next." Quentin picked up a towel and began drying the clean pans. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the clink of metal echoing softly. "Marisol told me you've been covering extra shifts." Nate shrugged. "Someone had to." She was already stretched. "You're not going to be asked to do that anymore." Nate let out a breath. "Feels strange." "What does?" "Having someone say that and actually mean it." Quentin turned to him. I get it, but you've got my word. You're not going to be punished for being reliable. Nate nodded slowly. Appreciate that. Quentin stepped out as the mop bucket was being rolled to the back. Marisol was checking off the final closeout list on the clipboard, pen moving down the column with practiced focus. Everything check out? He asked. She tapped the back of the pen against the clipboard. Yeah, we're good. Just waiting on the delivery guy to pick up the grease trap bin. He's late again. I'll follow up with the supplier tomorrow. She handed him the pen. You want to sign it off? He took it and initialed the bottom. I spoke with HR earlier, he said. Your new contract's being written tonight. You'll get the details in the morning. Marisol nodded once. You're going to have full hiring authority, he continued, and a budget increase for staffing. I want this place running with at least 6 on during peak hours. No more scraping by. That'll help, she said. But I'm not rushing anyone onto the floor. They'll train right, or they won't stay. I wouldn't expect anything else. She looked at him, eyes steady. You said you used to work the line. I did. Years ago. Then you know this isn't a one-fix thing. I do. That's why I'm not leaving this to chance anymore. I'll be back next week. I'm doing random drop-ins at every store. No warnings. Marisol cracked a dry smile. Good. Keeps everybody honest. An engine rumbled outside. The delivery truck finally pulled into the rear lot. Marisol headed out the back to meet him while Quentin moved to the office. He sat down at the desk, took out a small company ledger, and began writing notes. Not numbers, names. Paige, Nate, Jada, Marisol. He wrote them all down, then flipped to a fresh page and titled it, Store 4, Staff Rebuild Plan. He didn't hear Paige enter until she was already near the door. You're really staying on this? She asked. I have to, he said without looking up. If I don't, things fall right back. She stepped closer. Why now? Why not months ago? He looked up. Because I trusted systems more than people. Reports, numbers, graphs. But numbers don't show you the look on someone's face when they're scared to speak, or what it feels like to be told you're replaceable just because you ask for help. Paige crossed her arms lightly, not defensive, thoughtful. You think the other stores are like this? Some are better, some worse. But I'm not assuming anything anymore. She nodded once, then turned to leave. Before she stepped out, she paused. I'm glad you came here as a customer first, she said. If you'd walked in wearing a suit, we wouldn't have said a word. He sat quietly for a moment after she left. Then he closed the ledger, stood, and turned off the office light. By 10:15, the store was locked, floors mopped, grills scrubbed, and lights dimmed to night mode. The team stood near the exit, bags over shoulders, ready to go. Quentin walked with them to the lot. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's lighter. You've earned it. They nodded one by one and made their way to their cars. Marisol lingered a moment longer. Anything else before I go? Just this, Quentin said. You ever feel like you're being asked to do too much, say something. Don't carry it alone. She gave a short nod, then turned and walked to her car. Quentin stood in the lot until the last taillight disappeared around the corner. He didn't feel proud. Not yet. There was too much left to do. But for the first time in a long while, he felt certain. The company his father built wasn't just still standing, it had a chance to become something better. Something stronger. Something human again. And that started with listening. Then showing up. Then staying.